Do you have a favorite spoon? I know you do. It might still be in your childhood home or some ex stole it, but you've got a favorite spoon. Or a fork or whatever. But somewhere along the line, you decided for some reason, this spoon is my favorite. Personally, I have an affinity for smaller spoons, preferably slightly pointy, not like these ones, and with a thin, sometimes ornate handle. I remember being at my grandparents' house, dipping sugar cubes in coffee, allowing it to melt on the specific spoon I picked out, stirring the cream or making hot chocolate. Maybe the reason I love those spoons today is because of those memories. Their value increases as I'm holding on to those moments I'll never get to relive. But even back then, I still had a preference. For some reason, I attached a feeling onto that specific spoon. But it's not just spoons we connect with. Humans have been connecting with objects for centuries. Knights named their swords. Sailors still name their ships. Musicians see their instruments as extensions of themselves. It's an inherent trait to treat important things as if they're alive. When you're alone on the battlefield, there is a solace in wielding Anduril, the flame of the west. When the waves grow larger and a storm looms overhead, you can stand easy knowing... I was supposed to add the name of a cool boat that survives some crazy event here, but most boat stories are about how the boat breaks, so... You can stand easy, knowing the amazing grace has your back. We all grieved the passing of the brave Mars rover named Opportunity in 2018. It's human nature to have a bias, so maybe it's not crazy that we assign value to inanimate objects based purely on vibes. But what happens when that object starts to respond? With the recent rise of AI, people have started to use ChatGPT as a therapist, consultant, or even as a substitute for a partner. Parasocial relationships, where we form one-sided bonds with celebrities or fictional characters, have been studied since the 50s, but these relationships, these characters, no matter how deep and intriguing, have always been one-sided. Until now. Now you can go to a website, chat with your favorite character, and they will respond. Not with pre-programmed answers, but they'll respond to you. Now imagine if that AI had a body, a unique physical representation, which looked like you and me. What if this inanimate object started to feel, evolve, and make its own choices? What if these robots were no longer androids? Robots, or more specifically artificial lifeforms, have existed in human legend for centuries. One of the earliest examples comes from Finnish folklore. A widowed smith tries to forge a new wife from gold, but finds her hard and cold. Cultures all over the world have imagined clay statues, armor, or even enchanted golems coming to life. But looking at the history of robots in fiction, there is an obvious upswing during the Industrial Revolution. With machines becoming part of daily life, the idea of mechanical men truly took shape. Funnily enough, the word android predates the word robot. It's credited to the novel The Future Eve from 1886, where an artificial woman is supposed to replace a flawed, real one. The word robot wasn't coined until 1921, when the Czech writer Karel Čapek wrote his book Rosam's Universal Robots. robota in the original Czech comes from the word rab, meaning slave. This creates an interesting question for what it means to be a robot. If a robot is a slave, forced to work, can a robot be made out of organic material? Does it even have to be an artificial life form? If a horse is trained and forced to pull a carriage, is it just as much a robot as the AI in a self-driving car? With time, robots have come into their own as a staple in sci-fi stories. However, while there was some intelligence in some of the robots, early depictions rarely focused on their thoughts or inner workings. In many cases, the main focus of the stories was the human characters and how the robots acted as their reflections. In the first android story, The Future Eve, the android is made to be a mirror of the main character's love interest, but stripped of her personality. The android is not a character, but rather a fantasy. The story is less about the actual android and more about the reason for and making of the android. The human need for affection and closeness is the first important part of giving birth to living androids. But robots weren't always as sympathetic or self-aware as we tend to think of androids today. At the time, they were machines, programmed with rules and behaviors to follow. We can see this in the film Metropolis. In the story, there's a massive divide between the elite of Metropolis and the workers in the underground city, forced to run the machines. In a way, the workers can be seen as robots. They've been conditioned to accept their position as slaves. They walk in unison, work and rest when they're told, and there's no resistance or questioning of their treatment. That's when Maria starts holding meetings, planting the seeds of rebellion in the workers. She advocates for a peaceful agreement between the workers and the so-called employer. In a turn of events, Maria gets kidnapped and her likeness is used to create a robot, an android used to trick the workers into a violent revolution. It's almost poetic how this android, despite being programmed to follow the word of its maker, is the one to spur the laborers to action. Robots not obeying humans is the second piece in creating androids. Isaac Asimov's 3 laws of robotics are so prominent that they're almost synonymous with robot behavior today. His logical rules, despite being sensible, made it impossible for a robot to ever turn on humans. A robot shall not harm a human. A robot must obey humans. A robot should protect its existence, as long as no human is hurt or disobeyed. These 3 rules were defined and are still cornerstones in how we view robots today. But in 1952, Dr. Tenma, after the tragic passing of his son, built Astro Boy. Astro Boy, or Adam, is portrayed as having human emotions. He too can have preferences, feel hurt, or be selfless. It's explained that he has inherited the traits of Dr. Tenma's son, but a major factor that leads to Tenma rejecting Adam is Adam's inability to grow as a real boy. Both physically, but also mentally. Adam will always be a child. To Tenma, a boy who doesn't fail, never makes mistakes, or doesn't anger his father, can never be a real boy. Adam is the main character of his story, and yet he's quite simple to understand. His emotions are clear and childlike, but consistent. Despite the universe of Astro Boy adhering to Asimov's laws, Adam regularly goes against these at multiple times. While Adam is a well-meaning robot, he definitely can bend the rules or disobey when needed. He might lack the ability to evolve or change over time, but that doesn't stop him from following some kind of instinct. The final step in going from robot to a living android is breaking the programming. HAL 9000 from 2001 A Space Odyssey is a perfect example of an ideal AI collapsing because of the paradox of human thinking. HAL starts out as a logical, helpful, and precise AI with a simple goal: help the crew. But hidden in HAL's programming, there is a contradiction. Be truthful and helpful, but conceal the true purpose of the mission. The two opposing instructions break the logic of his programming, and HAL goes rogue. Not because he's evil, but because of the contradiction of humans. He turns on the crew because he fears them. The crew are an unpredictable variable that have become a threat to both him and the mission. This self-preservation is a turning point in the history of fictional robots. HAL has evolved beyond obeying or disobeying rules. He's a machine that can choose what to do. He's a machine that creates his own purpose. I've tried my best to call these robots just that, robots. I would like to separate androids from living androids, because they fulfill these three qualities: having emotions, having agency, and having the ability to grow past their programming is what defines a living android. By exhibiting these qualities, what once was a machine is no longer android. Take Connor from Detroit Become Human. Similarly to HAL 9000, he starts out as a perfect AI, able to analyze situations, calculate outcomes, and draw conclusions from the smallest of details. But already in the introduction to his character, he is forced to lie, make judgment calls, and sympathize with a terrified android who just committed murder. His ability, even if it's part of his programming, to connect with and understand an android who is afraid, angry, and has killed, makes him more human than he realizes. The game is a choose-your-own adventure, so outcomes may vary, but even if you play as robotic you possibly can, answer in the coldest possible ways, and adhere to all of the rules, you can't deny that Connor has the inherent ability to both act and react. The game giving you multiple options is its way of telling you that Connor, and every other android for that matter, has a consciousness. Connor deviating from his programming isn't a glitch, or a logical fallacy like with HAL 9000. It's a choice he makes throughout the entire game. In the universe, androids who deviate are seen as dangerous. Maybe unsurprisingly, an android who was used as a tool, with no affection or care given, will react negatively to being free from whatever chains were holding them back. This is why Marcus, another android, is such an interesting character. He's the caregiver of Carl, an older man, and a painter on his last leg. We see how Carl cares for Marcus, wants him to be more than what he's told to be, and praises him for being an individual. This kindness shown to Marcus while he was still simply following orders might have been the reason why he's able to choose a non-violent revolution and become a sort of messiah for the androids. Connor's role as an investigator is to find and stop deviant androids. But through his relationship with his partner Hank and meetings with deviants such as Marcus, he finds that deviance is not inherently bad. Deviance is freedom. Hank is maybe the most important relationship for Connor's development and understanding of human emotions. At the start, Hank is just another cop, a mission partner with a strong dislike for androids. For Connor's investigation to go smoothly, it's important for the two of them to have a rapport. You're able to search Hank's desk, ask him questions about his life, and try to make a connection with him. Hank is a complex character, but most importantly for Connor's change is that Hank likes you more if you display human emotions he can relate to. He's cynical and can see through any attempt at faking kindness. Hank will trust Connor more if Connor lashes out, doesn't follow protocol, or shows humanity despite the rules. Connor choosing to build this rapport actively, despite also being in the best interest of the mission, humanizes him. If robots are a reflection of the humans in a story, Hank is the mirror through which Connor learns the meaning of feeling trust, guilt, and a need to be better. When Connor becomes a deviant himself, it's not a malfunction, it's emotional growth. It's a slow change that occurs across most of the game, which makes him so interesting. The other deviants we see break free from their programming after or during a particularly traumatic event. But Connor never has that. His programming becomes more unstable over the course of multiple cases. For him, unlike Hal, deviance isn't a breakdown. It's a breakthrough. Connor shows us that being human isn't simply about being humanoid. His transformation is slow, shaped by his relationships, understanding of others, and his choices. Someone who didn't have a choice is Chiyou. In Nine Souls, you meet the android Chiyou, who was created for a single purpose: to kill. Chiyou was born as a mindless weapon, together with his brother Xingtian, as part of an experimental program during the war. The program shut down due to the lack of cognitive independence in the weapons, which made them uncontrollable. Chiyou and Xingtian were locked away for years. But in this isolation, Chiyou changed. Through reading, he developed sentience. He escapes his captivity, and rather than looking for revenge, he seeks experience. As a free soul, Chiyou learns about art, independence, and love. In the game, his function is that of a shopkeeper, and he trades useful items for Jin. Jin is the currency, and is also made of the same material he uses to repair himself. As you meet with him, over time, he grows stronger from the Jin you give him. His recovery, his strength, doesn't come from violence, but rather connection and trade. Through your connection, he gains the confidence to discuss his brother. You actually defeat Xingtian in battle, but Chiyou explains that the two of them, as artificial life forms, can't be killed that easily. Chiyou knows that his brother is still a mindless weapon, an existence Chiyou views as torturous. Freedom and autonomy has become the most important thing to Chiyou, and his brother's inability to break free from the shackles of obedience leaves him no choice. Chiyou has to kill his brother to set him free. Not out of anger, hatred, or fear, but out of love. Through his journey of the world, Chiyou has explored peacefully. With his freedom, he also grew a distaste for violence, something he's quite vocal about. Him leaving his morals and turning back to violence to help his brother shows a complexity in how he works. The act of ending his brother's suffering is almost a self-sacrifice. He sacrifices the person he became in freedom in order to give his brother independence. Chiyou is a mirror to you. You walk around killing any enemy in your way because that's your path. Chiyou only turns to violence to help his brother on his path. What's interesting about his character, though, is that despite wanting to be peaceful, spending his time learning about love and art, ending his brother is ultimately a selfish act. Chiyou is the one suffering from knowing Xingtian lacks sentience. Chiyou is the one bothered by his brother's position as an obedient weapon. And even when framing it as setting his brother free, it's to ease his own conscience. This is possibly one of the most human-like experiences there are. The morality in doing a bad deed for a good cause, helping someone who can't ask for help, and compromising yourself for others. For Chiyou, there is no choice. To him, Xingtian is still his family, a brother who needs help. He has the weight of responsibility, a distinctly human instinct of caring and carrying someone who can't deal with their burden alone. But the burden of responsibility and sacrificing for his humanity is not a weight Chiyou is alone in carrying. Gesicht is a detective. He's been sleeping poorly for the past few weeks, ridden with nightmares. His wife is there for him. She recognizes that something is wrong and suggests a vacation to blow off some steam. He sips his coffee as they watch the news together. Finally, they kiss goodbye and Gesicht leaves for work. He's an incredible detective, makes deductions, reasons, and finds clues others miss. Everything seems quite normal, until he learns of a violent thief. He tracks the thief to an abandoned church, where he reveals that he is a robot. Gesicht is one of 7 highly advanced androids. Similarly to Chiyou, he was originally created as a weapon. During the war, robots were created to fight other robots, as the international laws forbid robots to hurt humans. The horrors of war, the death and destruction of robots as well as humans, and the ruins left behind, haunts Gesicht daily. Once the war was over, Gesicht was repurposed as a detective. The same way a veteran human might be forced to change jobs and still be haunted by the ghosts of their past. Gesicht has to push through the trauma of war and be a functioning member of society. He is meant to live peacefully, solving crimes against both humans and robots, but something inside him fails to suppress the memories of him having to destroy a robot child. His memories aren't constant, the same way you or I don't think about a traumatic event every waking second. His memories flash when he's reminded of his past. It's not a complete breakdown of his mind, but rather small glimpses of important moments that stuck with him, which impact how he behaves and interacts, even still. Through his investigation, Gesicht meets Atom. As it turns out, the series Pluto takes place in the same universe as Astro Boy. Gesicht and Atom meet and build a bond. Atom has the wonder of a child within him and tries to mimic humans as closely as possible. It's a behavior which fascinates Gesicht, as they both try to understand human emotions. They work together on solving the case of a robot murdering Shadow until Atom is destroyed. The trauma from Atom's destruction awakens a memory within Gesicht, a memory of a child, his child. 2 years ago, Gesicht and his wife had a child. They raised him, saw his first steps, and loved him. But one day, their child was murdered by a xenophobic man who hated robots. The grief still haunts Gesicht and is a basis for his nightmares. When he learned the truth about his child and faced the killer, something inside him changed. The subtle detail in his expression, sorrow, confusion, and hatred. Despite his programming, despite the laws and morality, he ends up returning to the weapon he once was and killed his son's murderer. This horrifying memory was removed and replaced with a happy visit to Spain. And yet, deep down, Gesicht still remembers his son. The grief, need for closeness, and the love he feels for both his wife and their son makes him human. Understanding of human emotions with Adam was just the first step in actually feeling human emotions, which brought back the memories of his son. Gesicht is given the task of protecting Mr. Haas, a member of an anti-robot association. Obviously, there is instant friction between them, but it grows stronger as we learn that Mr. Haas's brother was the man who murdered Gesicht's son. They share a mutual hatred for one another. Mr. Haas hates Gesicht because he murdered his brother. Gesicht hates Mr. Haas because his brother murdered his son. Despite their hatred, they both end up protecting each other. Gesicht learns how strong and how much power a feeling can have over you. Gesicht is grievously wounded, but before being sent to repairs, he has time to ask Mr. Haas if the hatred humans feel ever goes away. Mr. Haas's silence is confirmation that Gesicht has to live with the hatred of his son's killer the rest of his life. As he comes to terms with this realization, he says,
"Do you know what scares me the most, Adolf? It's me. I'm scared of myself, now that I've learned how to hate."
Gesicht faces morality and has to question himself who and what is worth protecting. And can an android decide what is just without feeling anger, sadness, or guilt? He goes on, investigating the attacks of the most advanced androids until he himself is shut down. Not because of a lack of strength, not because he failed the mission or was changed for a newer model, but because of his humanity. Gesicht meets a robot child selling flowers. He grows fond of him, possibly as he reminds Gesicht of his son. Then, one night, walking down the street, he meets the child. They stop to talk when he hears a gunshot. He reaches for the child, assuming he might be hurt or in danger. But that's when he realizes the child is holding the weapon. While attempting to connect, as he feels worry and closeness, Gesicht is killed. He has a deeper understanding than any other android of what it means to be human, and in the end, his final act was that of compassion, care, and love. Adam wakes up, not quite alive, but not quite dead. Tenma, his creator, has repaired him, but Adam's mind is not as it was. Tenma has infused Adam with Gesicht's memories and emotions. Adam now actually feels hatred, anger, and sorrow, which allows him to understand the evil trying to destroy the world. The shadow that's been hunting the androids is Pluto, an android fueled by hatred. While they do have a great battle, by the end, Atom and Pluto understand each other. Gesicht's feelings allow Atom to face Pluto, not as a mindless weapon, but with empathy. In a way, Gesicht is the one who finally defeats the evil. His ability to understand and feel what it means to be afraid, ashamed, and guilty is not part of his programming. For him, it's survival. Gesicht has a goal. He's programmed to solve cases, but his humanity doesn't lie within his ability to think rationally or reason as a human. It's in his changing state of mind, holding on to gut-wrenching emotions and still choosing to love. He's human because he chooses to live, despite the trauma he has to endure. If Connor is about choosing humanity, and Chiyou is about sacrificing for it, then Gesicht is about surviving humanity. If being a human means feeling, choosing and growing, then Connor, Chiyou and Gesicht are no longer androids. In these stories, androids become almost indistinguishable from humans. They grow through love, persevere through grief, and define their own purpose. So how come a lot of us, we who sympathize, understand, and relate to these androids, can't seem to do the same? Grief can make us fall apart. Love can be painful, and even still as a fully grown adult who earned a degree, I still feel as if I lack a purpose. In Osamu Dazai's No Longer Human, the protagonist Yoso lacks the ability to understand others, express himself, and stand up for his own thoughts. He simply agrees, follows along, and jokes around to please others. Even from a young age, he finds it easier to hide his true passion of hauntingly beautiful art by drawing simple cartoons. He hides through his entire life. He's painfully depressed, but uses comedy as a way to hide it from his peers and his parents. Maybe that's a universal experience, or maybe some of us are predisposed to it, but I for one can relate to the fear of letting on that anything might be wrong. Similarly to Yosu, I kept to myself a lot as a kid. While he would draw, I would make videos. We both had something that allowed us to disassociate from the world around us. The passion behind our work, the energy we put in, and choosing to focus our emotions into our art is something unexplainable. It's scary to share. Maybe people won't understand. Maybe they'll just laugh or tell you how worthless you are. We both struggle to relate to others and understand our peers. Human interactions are frightening, and it feels as if every word you say is wrong. Maybe that's why spending time working with tools feels so much better. Maybe that's why we create such a strong bond with our supplies. What we use our pencils, editing programs, and cameras for is real. They support our creating, our feelings, our humanity. In being who we truly are in our art, we may leave a lasting impact. Yosu, through his struggles, can't see himself as a human. He's impulsive, addicted to alcohol, and seems devoid of empathy. It's quite clear Yosu is depressed with thoughts like, I want to die more than ever before. There's no chance now of a recovery. And reading between the lines, you get the sense that it's possibly a result of a neurodivergence. The lack of understanding humans and the feeling of not being understood is something I can struggle with as well. Going through the expected emotions, doing everything right, and just accepting that you can't shape the world around you. Having ideas that you can't realize because it would be too crazy, unrealistic, or simply not needed by anyone. When I look at life this way, I can't help but to feel I'd be more robotic than Connor, Chiyou, or Gesicht unless I do something. Something unexpected, something impossible, something that's just for me. Finding individual short moments that reminds me of my humanity. Even Yosu finds these moments, although he doesn't recognize it and falls deeper in his depression. In the end of No Longer Human, I hated Yosu. He was given so many chances, met trusting and nice people, and time-wise got better. Still, he chose not to take the help. Despite everything, I think I'll always hurt every time I read this passage. I gave up drink and devoted my energies to drawing cartoons. After dinner, we would go out together to see a movie, and on the way back, we would stop at a milk bar or buy pots of flowers. But more than any of these things, it gave me pleasure just to listen to the words or watch the movements of my little bride, who trusted in me with all her heart. Then, just when I had begun to entertain faintly in my breast the sweet notion that perhaps there was a chance I might turn, one of these days, into a human being and be spared the necessity of a horrible death, Horiki showed up again. I think these words hurt so much because he's so close to finally being happy, to finding something meaningful in the smallest of things. And it's a cycle I think it's quite easy to find yourself in. Some of my happiest moments are the ones where I write, work on something I care about, or put myself out of my comfort zone. And yet, there's that ever-looming, untamable temptation of video games, YouTube videos, and just sitting on the couch eating snacks. Spending my time, wasting my time with things that won't matter in the long run. Those are the moments where I feel like I'm just a shell. Something useless, powerless, and tragic. Less than human. But then I also think back on the growth I've had, the changes in my mentality, and the ways I'm better than yesterday. Being human doesn't mean to be perfect, but it also doesn't mean you can't become something more. Humanity is about being what and who you want to be, taking charge of the changes, making the choices, and persevering through hardships to shape your life. Relating to others, being understood, and surviving long enough to understand yourself are the first steps to being truly alive. If Connor, Chiyou, and Gesicht, or hell, if I and my anxiety helped you realize you're no longer Android, then feel free to leave a like or subscribe for more videos like this. I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Tell me about the hundreds of androids I didn't talk about, or maybe share a personal experience so others might relate to you. Do whatever you want, like make your own choices and keep on living. My name's Turtle-kun. Remember to eat well, sleep well, and I will see you in the next video.